You're tapping?
Member Foster, are you able to hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. We are waiting on Vice President Close to join us, so we will be starting in a few minutes.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So Vice President Close is running a little tiny bit late, but we're going to go ahead and get started and then just welcome him in when he arrives. We'll try that again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I just repeat what I just said. So Vice President Close is running a tiny bit late. We're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. So if I could have everybody please rise for the come on in. We're waiting for you for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Before we have Ashley do the roll call, just a couple of housekeeping items for board members that are present, all of you lovely folks. There are microphones directly in front of you. When they are red, the mic is not live. Please click on the mic when you want to speak. The mic will turn green and then you may say what you need to say. When you are done, please make sure you push the mic again so that it turns red. For board members participating via Zoom, hi, Member Foster. Please stay on mute. If you would like to speak, please push the hand icon to indicate you would like to speak. This will help me know that you would like to say something, and then I will make sure you have an opportunity to speak. For charters and applicants on the agenda that are participating via Zoom, please stay muted until your item is called. Once your item is called, board staff will introduce the item, and then I will call on you to address the board. At that time, you may unmute yourself. And finally, for charters or applicants on the agenda participating in person, once your item is called, board staff will provide a brief introduction and answer any questions board members may have for the staff. Then I will request that the representatives for the charter come up to the podium to address the board. Just a friendly reminder, the microphone is the same that we have up here, so please make sure before you speak that you hit the button and that the mic turns green. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for us to hear you. And with that, Ashley, will you please take roll?
Good morning, everyone. President Monteith,
Present.
Vice President Close,
Good morning. I'm here.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Good morning.
Ms. Barr,
Here.
Dr. Crockett,
Here.
Ms. Foster,
Here.
Ms. Jones,
Here.
Mr. Ruiz,
Here.
Mr. Stratton, Mr. Swanson. With that, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, on to item D, Superintendent's report. Superintendent Designee Miller, welcome. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, President Monteith and fellow board members. I'd like to share with you Superintendent Horn's March report. The superintendent enjoyed greatly speaking with the many charter representatives who were in attendance during last week's Charters at the Capitol. Thank you to the Charter School Association for hosting the eventful day and to the engaged lawmakers and community members that made it extra meaningful. One of the important subjects discussed was the superintendent's concern regarding the quote-unquote extraordinary absenteeism rate that has grown from 9% during the 2019-2020 school year to 30% during the 2022-2023 school year. Data recently presented by Helios Foundation shows chronic absenteeism skyrocketing across nearly every grade level compared to pre-pandemic levels. Horn stated, quote, "The idea that a third of our students are missing 18 days of school or more is a real catastrophe and an emergency for our state. We need radical efforts to solve this problem. You can't teach a student who is not there," end quote. The urgency to raise proficiency rates and academic outcomes, of course, runs parallel to the urgency to get our kids back in school. Understanding that truancy enforcement resources can be even more challenging for charter schools, the superintendent encourages schools to adopt centralized measures he proposes to enforce attendance policies, such as 9 unexcused absences resulting in a failing grade for a course and 5 tardies counting as an absence. This concludes the superintendent's report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And on to item E, Executive Director's report from Ashley.
President Montiers, Vice President Close, and Superintendent Designate Miller, and board members. I'm excited to introduce one of our newest employees to you. His name is Ryan Lang. He has been hired as an education program specialist down in Tucson and will be serving our Tucson and Southern region. I believe Ryan is on our Zoom. Ryan, if you can, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the board.
Hello, good morning. My name is Ryan Lang, and on January 6, 2025, I joined the Arizona State Board for Charter Schools as an education program specialist assigned to Southern Arizona. I am humbled I was offered the position, as I know it bestows great responsibility on me to continue serving the students, families, and charter schools of our state to achieve the best outcomes possible. I attended a large public district schools in Gilbert, Arizona as a child, but I fell in love with Southern Arizona once I moved there to attend the U of A. While I tried living in Flagstaff while attending NAU and Las Cruces while attending New Mexico State University, the siren song of a city that feels much smaller, closer, and kinder than its 500,000 residents would ever suggest led me to return to Tucson in the spring of 2013 and to quickly transfer all those semesters as a graduate teaching assistant with freshman composition sections into a classroom at a small K-12 charter full of teenagers working towards high school graduation. In those 12 years of teaching, I felt my commitment to the diversity and value of students and their goals for improving the world they live in, particularly in Southern Arizona, strengthened every day there. And as I now move into supporting students throughout my part of the state by supporting accountability, providing information, and efficiently serving many schools and their students and families, I'm honored to continue that original sense of responsibility I felt for education as I move into my new position here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work with and for you in this position, and I look forward to the progress and achievement of Southern Arizona's charter schools as we work together in this shared goal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. And as I do every month, as an update on the number of approved amendments and agreements, the board and President Montier has signed one surrender agreement in the month of February. So that will be a closure for a school at the end of the school year, June 30th of 2025. There were no online schools approved in February. However, I did approve 29 amendments. And remember, these are very technical amendments to the contracts of updating board members, updating terms of the contract that are just more operational in nature. And then for school reviews, our staff completed 2 interval reviews and 12 renewals. And our staff was able to complete 15 on-site visits in the month of February. Additionally, as an update on board legal actions, the board and board staff in collaboration with board counsel did finalize the operational agreement for West Valley Arts and Technology, Inc. The operational agreement for Franklin Phonetic Primary School, Inc. has also been signed and executed. I'm sorry, we are still working to finalize the agreement for West Valley Arts and Technology, but have finalized the agreement for Franklin Phonetic. On December 16th, 2024, the board denied Matina's Community Services, Inc. for a new charter application. That applicant has appealed the board's decision. Therefore, the matter is set for a hearing on March 13th and 14th before the Office of Administrative Hearings. With that, President Montier, that is all I have to report.
Thank you, Ashley. On to item F, call to the public. We received 3 written public comments for agenda item H1A, American Virtual Academy. All comments are included in the posted agenda and on our website. And we have 2 individuals that have requested to speak at this board meeting. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to present their comments. Please conclude your remarks once the timer goes off. Our first public comment is Jaden Galwente. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. So come on up. Please make sure that you hit the button so that the microphone turns green.
Hello, hello. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Jaden. I'm with Multivista. In short, Hexagon Multivista is a construction technology company. We utilize 3D laser scanning in existing K-12 facilities to help solve the problem of outdated floor plans, evacuation routes, and life safety plans. Multivista has been in service for over 20 years. Some notable and relevant clients include ASU, Honor Health, and Banner. You can see a full list of relevant clients in the handout. In light of the recent auditor report titled Arizona School Safety Emergency Operations Planning, the main reason why K-12 aren't able to create emergency operation plans is because they are missing accurate maps of their schools. One of the key findings was that most school EOPs that were reviewed met fewer than half of the EOP minimum standards that were tested, and some charter schools did not have EOPs at all, which could affect their abilities to effectively respond to safety emergencies. Schools cannot build emergency operation plans or evacuation plans if the map of their school is wrong. Our technology can fix this. We have learned that when 911 dispatchers are doing a training scenario, utilizing floor plans provided from schools and guiding an officer to an incident on campus, they were unsuccessful because the maps were not consistent with what was actually on campus. This exact training scenario came from the police communications manager with Gilbert Police Department. Some other folks we received similar feedback from include a meeting with the Arizona Fire Marshal that we had in January. What we can do is provide K-12 updated and accurate floor plans and also overlay evacuation routes and life safety plans. Additionally, we provide a remote walkthrough of each campus. In conclusion, K-12 are lacking accurate floor plans. You cannot build an emergency operations plan without having the right foundation to begin with. With our 3D scanning technology and services, we can equip K-12 with the necessary maps to build an emergency operations plan to help improve the school's emergency preparedness. Multivista does have 46 offices across the US. I sit here locally in Arizona. I have more info in the handout, but typically I sit down with safety, facilities, IT, operations departments, and I'll be more than happy to dive deeper into this with you guys at a separate time if you would like more information. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And our second request to speak, Cassandra Carpenter, speaking on agenda item H1A, American Virtual Academy.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Cassandra Carpenter, and I'm here as a parent of two Primavera students. One is in first grade and one is in 11th. And I just want to share my story about why Primavera has been a life-changing option for our family. My youngest is in first grade. And since he was 2, he's been very, very gifted. He's been reading since he was 2, doing math. He has an obsession with soft body physics, something I know very little about. But he also has dyslexia and sensory processing disorder. And so a regular brick and mortar was not an option for us, which is why we decided to homeschool him until we moved to Arizona 2 years ago. The move itself was very stressful for my family, and the thought of putting him into a brick and mortar just wasn't ideal. We weren't sure if his needs would be met. We didn't know if they would be overlooked. So we decided to combine our homeschooling efforts with the curriculum that Primavera put together. And in doing that, we got so much more than we thought we would get, not just the educational components, but the community. So he was able to link up with other kids his age. He was able to meet teachers. He has a guidance counselor, and he gets all of the support that he needs to thrive, which we know would not have happened in a traditional brick and mortar for him with his disabilities. My oldest son, who's 16, is quite a different story. He was the kid that struggled in school. He was the kid that got bullied in school. And we put him through traditional brick and mortar all the way up through 9th grade. Unfortunately, at that time, he was brutally assaulted at a school football game. It was recorded, it went viral. And then he was forced to sit through classes and walk the same halls with his attacker. So we pulled him out of that school when we moved to Arizona. And we attempted to put him back into a different brick and mortar with the hopes that a fresh start would give him what he needed. Unfortunately, that environment just triggered all kinds of things for him, including panic attacks, social anxiety, severe depression.
He withdrew from sports. He was withdrawing from his family. So Primavera was the option for us. And through that, he was able to engage in his classes again. He was connecting with teachers. He was feeling safe. And I'm proud to say that last year he got his first job. He's making friends. And all of this was through the efforts that Primavera put forth for our boys. So I just want to pose one question to you because I know that Primavera is under an intense amount of scrutiny. But really, how do we define success? Is it through a letter grade? Or is it through the families and the lives that are being touched through the efforts of the students and staff and teachers over at Primavera? Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And congratulations to your son for his job. That's awesome. Very cool. All right, consent item G, consent agenda. Do we have a motion?
I want to make a motion real quickly, though. I don't know if there's any representatives from Glen Canyon Outdoor Academy present, either virtually or not, but I'm doing some work in Tuba City, and I would like Ashley just give you the heads up, and any reps from Glen Canyon, that I would like to coordinate a visit there, and Shanto probably. No, Tuba's arguably not physically close to either one of those locations, but in the Navajo Nation and with reliable transportation, it's just around the corner. So, also in that vein, I want to thank Binky for hosting me a tour of the facility that Ombudsman runs on the Pasco Yaqui Reservation down in Tucson. Thank you. But moving on, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Ashley, can we get a roll call, please?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Aye.
Miss Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Miss Foster,
Aye.
Miss Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
Aye.
President Montier.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Lovely. Moving on to our next item, charter amendments. Sorry, who is presenting this? You are. Thank you. Okay, great. All right. So, Ashley.
The Arizona State Board for Charter Schools has adopted its academic performance framework pursuant to ARS 15183R1 and Arizona Administrative Code R75401 to outline the academic performance expectations of charter schools and measure sufficient progress toward academic performance expectations. Arizona Administrative Code R75508 and the adopted framework require that a charter holder that has one or more schools that receive an overall rating of does not meet standard or falls far below standard for 3 consecutive years has failed to demonstrate sufficient progress. In its determination of whether a charter holder demonstrates sufficient progress toward the board's academic performance expectations, the board will consider the overall rating for each of the schools in operation for the 3 most recent years that overall ratings are available and whether or not there has been improvement in the measures used to determine the overall rating. On February 12, 2025, the Arizona State Board of Education released the final letter grade file for FY 2024. Primavera Online, the single school operated by American Virtual Academy, was assigned a letter grade of D, resulting in an overall rating of does not meet on the academic dashboard. Primavera Online also received a letter grade of D in FY 2022 and FY 2023, resulting in ratings of falls far below standard and does not meet standard, respectively. Therefore, as required by the framework and rule, the charter holder is before the board for consideration of charter oversight due to receiving an overall rating of does not meet or falls far below for 3 consecutive years. With that, I'm available for questions.
Board members, do we have any questions for Ashley? No? Okay, is there a representative from the charter? Please come on up. Hi.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Good morning. esteemed President Montierth, and members of the board. My name is Damian Creamer, and thank you very much for your time today. We're here today because Primavera did not apply for alternative school status for 3 years. In losing that status, we were graded under a traditional school standard, even though we were still serving at-risk students and functioning as an alternative school. Had we simply applied like we had applied for the previous 10 years, we would have retained our alternative school status. We would have been rated as a performing school for all 3 years, and we would not be here today in front of you. But we are here in front of you. And I make no excuses for our mistakes, for letting this happen. We are here to explain to the board how this happened, what we've done and are doing to address it, and make sure that, most importantly, it never happens again. In late 2019, my wife, Noelle, was diagnosed with a fatal disease. It was one of the most terrifying times of our life. Life expectancy is about 18 months for this type of disease that she had. I made the difficult decision to step away from the school to take care of her at that time. Simultaneously, the world was thrown into chaos with COVID. After 20 years of operating as an in-person organization, we overnight went to a remote work type of organization, and our systems simply were not in place. Processes were dropped, things were missed, and we just experienced a significant amount of turmoil and instability. And while I was away taking care of Noelle, we had a significant leadership failure. And the process for reapplying for alternative school was simply missed. I want you to know that the onus is on us. I'm not here trying to make excuses. The onus is on me. I take full responsibility for this. I'm literally putting the livelihood of 750 people on the line right now, and I take that with huge responsibility. Since returning to the helm of Primavera, we have reapplied for alternative school status. We have been approved, and we will be a performing school when the letter grades come out this year. We've been in a performing alternative school since the state came out with the system in 2012, the alternative school system in 2012. This is the very first time in 24 years of operating Primavera that I have ever had to come before the board for anything. It's deeply humiliating and it's mortifying. And I want to apologize to you guys as well. With your permission, we'd like to walk you through the decisive actions that we've taken to rectify this situation and the concrete steps that we are implementing to restore full confidence in Primavera. Primavera is such an important part of the Arizona educational ecosystem. Contrary to what some people may say, every year, 20,000 students on average come to Primavera. 20,000 Arizona students come to Primavera. There's 750 people who support the students' education. We provide some of the most amazing things to these students, and it takes just a tremendous Herculean effort to provide the services. And our kids are some of the most at-risk, vulnerable students in the state. So many of them, like our parent who talked, are in the same situation. Kids who have fallen out of the cracks, they've dropped out, and they're coming back in. Students who are severe disabilities, all you name it. The kids, these are very vulnerable students. But in addition to that, there's one program I wanted to mention that I think is really important to mention because it's a huge, huge benefit for the state. That's our credit recovery program. The wisdom of the state, the way that we're funded over 365 days, We're able to provide credit recovery for thousands and thousands and thousands of students every single year. These students are on the verge of not graduating with their class. We have informal relationships with every school in the state. Sometime right around now, we're getting calls from guidance counselors, and they're referring students to us in droves. They want their kids to graduate on time, and we gladly welcome these kids in, and we educate them, and we get them those credits that they need, and then we send them right back to their school so that they can graduate and walk with their class. And this is wonderful for the students and the families. Of course it is, but it's also really good for the state of Arizona, and I'll tell you why. Because those thousands of students who we help graduate, now, the school's graduation rates increases and their dropout rates decrease. And that's a huge benefit for everyone. Everybody wins. So again, I'm here to take ownership and responsibility. And I would like to turn the time over to Vanessa Yazzie, who's our Executive Director of Operations.
Good morning, everybody. Like Damien said, my name is Vanessa Yazzie. I'm currently the Executive Director at Primavera. I've been in education for just over 20 years. Mr. Creamer notated why we're here. I'm able to talk about what steps we've taken to avoid us losing our alternative school status. One of the things we've implemented is we've created a very defined status for identifying our alternative school students. We've also updated our standard operating procedures to ensure that all communication and deadlines are clearly outlined and shared with all relevant stakeholders. Primavera school leaders will review the application and the standard operating procedures at the start of each school year. We've also added an emphasis on collecting full academic history for all newly enrolled students, which also includes state test results. We've also created a calendar of events, which includes key dates and deadlines for applications, and ensuring that nothing is overlooked and that regardless of the future changes in leadership, we have a master calendar to refer to ensure we're meeting all deadlines. We've continued to focus to increase the percentage of students attending state testing, and that is reflected of over the last 2 years, we've doubled our attendance participation. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our head of school, Mrs. Jessica Pagalatis, who will talk in greater detail about the steps we've taken to improve our student outcomes. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jessica Pagalatis. I'm the head of school at Primavera Online. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak on this issue today. A little bit about me. I have 2 master's degrees in education. I've been in education for over 15 years and I'm a certified principal. But I'll get right to it. At Primavera, we believe that students and families deserve the highest quality of education. I fully recognize and agree that a letter grade of D does not reflect that, nor is it acceptable for our school or any other school. But I'm so proud to say that our staff at Primavera really does put students at the center of everything that we do. So I'd like to share with you some of the things that we've been working on and will continue to work on in order to improve our academic performance and hopefully exceed your expectations. So to start, in the 22-23 school year, we revised our master calendar to provide teachers with uninterrupted time to collaborate in their professional learning communities each week, or what we call PLCs. During this time, they analyze student performance data and design instruction and support for our students. In the 23-24 school year, we transitioned from NWEA to ExactPath for a more comprehensive benchmarking system so that we could benchmark our students in grades 3 through 8 and administer a diagnostic to our students in K through 12. With ExactPath, we're also able to design an individualized, personalized learning path for our students in order to address the additional areas of need. But the technology does not do all of the work. We also have amazing teachers who not only design whole group instruction for our students, but also targeted small group intervention for our students. With our benchmarks, we do see growth, so we are motivated to build on those gains. In addition, we have enhanced our professional development to make sure that it is also in alignment. So we're providing teachers the support in order to provide students with effective instruction and intervention, as well as data analysis. Leadership is also a large component of that. We are regularly reviewing our student and teacher performance data and monitoring the effectiveness of our efforts, adjusting strategies and providing support and resources. We also provide our students with unlimited free in-house tutoring that they can access 12 hours a day, so that we are providing additional layers of support, especially those who need it the most. We know that academics is also very important, but we also believe that building community and connection is essential to student success. So with that, we have increased our in-person events as well as our virtual events for students in the form of assemblies and special information sessions for our parents to focus on topics such as grade level transition, state assessment, and graduation requirements. We know that when students have a sense of belonging or feel a sense of belonging, that they are more likely to feel motivated, engaged. So like you, we understand that the stakes are very high for our students and families, and we take that very, very seriously. We remain committed and passionate about improvement and growth, and will continue to work to provide our students and families the best educational experience. With that, I would like to introduce you to our Director of Data and Enterprise Analytics, Mike Kuntz, to talk to you about some of our data and our dashboards.
Thanks, Jessica, and thank you, board members, for this time today. My name is Mike Kuntz, and I'm the Director of Enterprise Analytics. And to prepare for this meeting, I took a look at the last 3 years of our state report card data in order to ascertain what our grade level would have been had we maintained alternative status as we should have. And I tried to use as much of the original submission files as possible so that we have a fair comparison, only changing those areas where alternative reporting differs from traditional. Had we maintained alternative status, we would have had a letter grade of C for the past 3 years. Now, a C would mean that we are a passable alternative school, but we endeavor to do more. Over the past few years, my team and I have worked with executives, leadership, school leadership, teachers to build out key performance indicator dashboards around a myriad of areas, such as academic achievement. We monitor things like withdrawals and non-starts so that we can see who is logging in and make sure that they're staying engaged in their course. We look at course progress so that we can see passing rates and current score in near real time so that we can adapt when needed. We follow students term over term so we can see who is staying with us and reach out to those who aren't. And then we look at end of course survey data so that we know how kids are perceiving our teachers. In addition to these dashboards, my team and I have created dashboards that are distributed daily around student enrollment and student engagement, but also teacher areas, teacher engagement, teacher community activity, teacher communication, and teacher presence and feedback, to name a few. We've also implemented interactive dashboards for all staff, all teachers, so they can parse the data however they want to. They can start from a very high holistic school level view and drill all the way down into granular student details. And it really saves them time trying to figure out who needs what help and in what area. We really feel we've built some of the most robust dashboards in education, and this continues to improve our ability to educate, engage, track, and support our students, our families, and our teachers. And with that, I will turn it back to Mr. Kramer.
Thank you, Mike. We're confident that Primavera will meet the board's academic requirements for fiscal year 2024 and beyond. And on behalf of myself and our team, we ask for the ability to continue to improve and serve our students and our families. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Board members, do we have questions? Member Jones.
President Montier, Vice President Close, board members, and Mr. Kramer, thank you for being here. We appreciate your presence here, for all your leadership and staff for being here. But I do have some very specific questions that I like to ask.
Sure.
And the questions I'm going to ask are really about looking into more detail into an indicator that's in the A through F letter grade that really doesn't matter what status you are, whether it's an alternative school, whether you're a traditional school, whether you're a hybrid school.
Mm-hmm.
What it does say, it's an indicator that does show that are there intentional decisions that are being made at the school level and leadership level to really get students where they need to be. And so I took a look at that data and broke it down, and I want to ask some specific questions about that. So I understand that when you identified and you took a look, you wanted to see that if you had gained alt status, what they call it, or alternative status, that you would have then not been in this situation. And so, although I understand that, I do still have some concerns. And being in the alternative education world, really having a really good understanding of that A through F letter grade, and really about the mission of alternative schools. It's not about creating a mission that then is going to allow us to work ourselves into accountability that works for us, but it's really about we're an alternative school because that's our North Star, because that is exactly what our purpose is and what our mission is and what we have set out to do. And so you've explained some of that, and I do appreciate that. But that being said, keeping an intentional process that allows you to then say, hey, this is my North Star. I'm going to apply for this status each year because I'm telling the community, the board members, that I believe in this process and this is what I do. So, but it goes back to, for me, the indicator is college and career readiness. And so when I look at that indicator, I'm troubled. And here's what it looks like to me. So in fiscal year 22, there were 0 points recorded for college and career readiness. And so in that A through F letter grade year, you were under a hybrid model. So that's 20 points. And this is getting detailed, but I think it does matter. So if you receive 0 points, it generally means that you don't self-report the item. In the alternative framework for A through F letter grade, that is a really high stakes indicator. It's 35 points. So if you actually got 0 points on that, you would not have had a C letter grade. You would have had below that. So then in the subsequent year, fiscal year 23, it looks like it was submitted, the data was submitted, but it was 3.1 out of 20 points, which even if you then translate that to the alternative framework, it's still extremely low. I mean, the average in a hybrid model is 14 points. You were at 3 points, and in an alternative model, it's 32 points. And then again, in fiscal year 24, it was 4.1 points. So I guess my question, and I appreciate, you know, the 12 items that you described through the presentation, and they all sound like course corrections. They sound intentional. But what I'm trying to figure out, I didn't hear anything about that. And that one indicator, it doesn't matter what A through F letter grade you're in.
Yep.
But it says a lot about the operations and the intentionality of the school and the leadership. So I want to give you a chance to talk about what is that going to look like and how are you going to be able to meet that standard?
Thank you so much, Board Member Jones. I appreciate that. And I will, you know, we appreciate the opportunity to respond to the question. I do want you to know that the leadership failures that we had were significant. We are not going to have that low. Those are the things that were mind-boggling and just very deeply troubling. And we had to make a lot of leadership changes because things just were not getting done. And that is super troubling. And I understand your trouble, and I appreciate the work that you do in alternative charter schools as well, because it is an honor and a privilege to take care of these children. The reason I started Primavera, if I may, for just one brief moment, I was most definitely an alternative risk student when I was a child. And it was when I was about 28 years old. And I said to myself, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? I want to take those kids that were kind of like me, and I want to wrap my arms around them, and I want to see if I can help them. And I have consecrated my entire life. I'm 55 years old, and I think I was probably the youngest person to ever start a charter school back in the day. But I've been doing this my entire life, and the kids that we serve, these are the students that are the most vulnerable, and it's a shame, and it's disrespectful to you and the other members of the board that this process was completely dropped. I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Pagalatos for 1 second.
Thank you for the wonderful question. I think it comes back to system and process. And so for us, monitoring and tracking this from the beginning of the school year is essential, as well as having those standard operating procedures in place. One of the other things that we've reflected on is the ownership of one person in certain task. So making sure that we have different departments and individuals cross-trained in the collection and monitoring of this data. So not only do we have our directors working together amongst themselves, but they're also working with our school counselors and our state reporting team to make sure that we are all aware of this tool and what's at stake and what we should be collecting and how we should be guiding and encouraging our students, but really having that process in place to make sure that, you know, we're doing that from the beginning and there's a shared knowledge there and it's not on one person.
So one follow-up question. Thank you. So what intentional programming have you put into place that are going to help students with college and career readiness?
So we do have students that attend EVIT and WestMech, and this is also an area that we are working on in terms of offering more CTE courses for our students. But our school counselors do provide a lot of one-on-one support for our students based on the path that they are choosing. So this is definitely an area of focus for us.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? Yeah, okay, Dr. Crockett.
President Montier and Vice President Close and members of the board. I also want to thank you for being here to present today. And you say that so. Let me start by saying your written public comment indicated that when you left, you had a leave of absence from Primavera, that you had an excellent staff in place to
I'm
continue.
sorry, an
You
excellent.
had confidence in your
Yeah.
staff. And so I'm not clear, and then hearing you testify today, it sounds like it was a very great failure. So can you explain that a little more?
Sure. While I was away, taking care of Noel, the leadership team that I left in place, I was confident that they were going to be able to carry everything forward. With COVID and everything that went on, I think that the processes, it was just a total lack of skill set. The skill set of the leadership that was there at the time really could not keep the staff together. They were focused on, I believe they were focused on making sure that the students were getting educated. However, there were so many processes that were being dropped behind the scene. It was, when I came back in and took it over, took the helm back, this process, yes, it was missed, but there were other things that we had a long time to put everything back together. It took me a very long time to get the leadership staff that I felt would be able to carry the school forward and be successful. We had to part paths with a lot of people who were there, unfortunately, and fortunately, I guess. And then we had to rebuild a lot of the systems and the processes. And we started looking at everything and the data and everything else to make sure that we were doing everything we needed to do to operate a high functioning school. And it just took a very long time to put it all back together. I think COVID was very, very, it was very chaotic for everybody, especially for this organization, because again, we had built our entire operations over 20 years from an in-person. We have about 75,000 square feet in Chandler, where hundreds of employees come to work each and every day. And overnight, everybody went home. And it was chaotic. It was just a mess.
Thank you. Mr. Creamer, when did you return to Primavera?
I returned sometime in the late spring of 2022.
Right. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Yes, you're welcome.
Dr. Crockett, do you have any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. Ms. Barr?
Yeah, Mr. Creamer, I guess where I'm struggling is that in fiscal year 2022, when you were given your first D grade, falls far below standard, did not register for alternative status. I know the board, has good communication and certainly puts together accountability to help schools recover from poor grades. But it doesn't sound, I have yet to hear anything about what you tried to do 3 years ago when this first happens. Now, I've been a charter school educator for 10 years now, and certainly COVID threw a wrench in everyone's lives, hit some of us in the head a little harder than others.
Yeah.
But the fact that, even after we saw that happen, it doesn't seem to me that any improvement or effort put in until, oopsies, now we're being called to account. I teach middle school, so I see the behaviors of, I'm going to, do things until the teacher calls me out on it.
Right.
And now you're standing in front of us here with the fate of many people in your hands. And I am very sympathetic to what you went through with your wife. My sincerest apologies. But when you're the only person listed as the corporate board member and you don't have anyone else to rely upon, and those you said you did rely upon drop the ball, that's unfortunate, but it does ultimately, you are the bottom line.
Of course.
And so what I am seeing is that this underserved population, you are underserving them, especially after hearing Member Jones's comments on career readiness and going to college. So how have you been helping the children of the state of Arizona be their best and not just saying, hey, we're going to get you guys through as best we can and cross our fingers with a lick and a prayer?
Yeah, it's a fair question, Board Member Barr, and I appreciate the question. Every day we put together the most amazing program for our students. Our curriculum is aligned down to the formative and summative assessments, aligned to the Arizona state standards. We have it aligned at the objective, the component, formative assessment, and we are monitoring and seeing exactly where learning is taking place and also where learning is not taking place. We have interventions with our teachers. We're working with our teachers each and every day to make sure that they are meeting the needs of the students and looking at the data from the students to make sure that that's where the students were learning is not happening, that we're going back and we're remediating and making sure that we're backfilling skills. So the entire staff is hyper focused on the student learning. We have tremendous amount of support for the students as well. We started in the last year, we started an in-house tutoring program where we have about 30 tutors we open it up from 8 a.m. in the morning until 8 p.m. at the night. Teachers are referring students over to these in-house tutors. This is not a third-party tutoring center out of someplace. It's our own staff, and they work with these students. And so if there's something going on with a student where a student's not learning, teachers pulling them in together in small groups. They're working very close. This is not just some digital curriculum type of a program where we just throw kids into digital courses. That's not what this is at all. These are cohort courses. They are teacher taught and led small groups. Teachers are doing synchronous sessions with students each and every day. We are looking at the students' data to see where students are not learning and see how we can help those students. So it is a full court press so that we are meeting the needs of all of these students. And we did, over the last 3 years, we've graduated 4,500 students. 4,500 students we've graduated. And so we're not perfect. And I do take 100% responsibility for this. And but I want you to know that we are working diligently each and every day to make sure that we are providing each and every student with a personalized learning path so that they can be successful. And these students that we teach, on average, students who come to Primavera have been at no less than 6 schools before they come to Primavera. We're their 6th school when they come to Primavera. So these are students who have tremendous mobility. These are kids who have been out of the system. And yeah, they are very challenging, very, very challenging. And we can't save them all, unfortunately, but we try to save as many as we possibly can, and we do. And so it is, we believe that we are meeting, that in this year when we will receive a performing grade this year. And we are alternative school status right now. And so, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Again, we're looking at what has been going on in the past. I mean, I
Mhm.
appreciate the very first school I taught at was 100% free and reduced lunch. I understand, I've been there, and it is a shame that you can't reach all of them, but it is our duty in our jobs to do what we can to serve those who are underserved.
Yes, ma'am.
I do have one other question about your enrollment. I'm looking at your full-time students. I know you said you got people popping in for a class or two. Fiscal year 2024, your numbers were just under 8,000, and in the last year, you have lost more than 1,000 students. Can you please explain what happened with those enrollment numbers, please?
Sure. Primavera's population will fluctuate from year to year depending on how many students we enroll. It's not like a brick and mortar school where you have a set amount of classrooms and you've got a set amount of students who are filling up those classrooms. It's an online school. And so it just depends on the year how many students we're going to enroll into the school. It's not like a brick and mortar school where you've got a set amount of classes and an expectation to fill up all of those classes. That's not how the school functions.
Okay, thank you.
So I do have another question. Did you, during this time, once you returned, or even before when you were in alternatives, brick and mortar, did you have any association with other alternative schools? Or, sometimes there are informal groups that meet and talk about problems, improvements, and so forth, and challenges.
We have a lot of relationships with schools, both alternative and regular schools, but no, not part of any associations or anything like that.
And so once you returned, did you, when you saw all these problems, did you contact the State Board for Charter Schools to see what resources were available to you, or the Association of Charter Schools to see what they might do? Yes, and
we're currently working with the Department of Education right now with their accountability office so that we can take a look at the data. But we work with schools everywhere. I wouldn't say that we had a formal process of reaching out to see if we could get any type of resources from other alternative schools or anything like that. But we do work with schools, and we are constantly staying abreast on the different research that's out there, making sure that we are meeting the needs of the students, trying to meet the needs of all of the students that we work with.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
For sure.
Oh, wait, hold on. Lots of questions. I'm so sorry.
Thank
Okay,
you,
all right.
President Montier. Good morning. Thank you again for being here with us this morning so humbly, and also apologize for the hardships that you experienced with your family. I had a couple of questions. One might be for staff, just as a point of clarification, because I know we heard the number 20,000 today for enrollment, and then we've also heard Member Barr's current number. Could we speak to that as a first? How many students are currently enrolled, and the difference between those two numbers?
I believe our average daily membership right now is somewhere around 8,200 students. That's an aggregation of the concurrently enrolled students and the full-time enrolled students and the consecutively enrolled students.
And then have you always served, you're serving K-12 currently, right?
Right.
Have you always served K-12?
No, we have not.
What year did you, so you were traditionally more of a secondary?
That is correct.
And then you expanded. What year did you expand to include the littles?
2018.
Do you attribute any of maybe this deterioration or this last couple of years academic performance? Do you feel like there's any correlation between grades served?
No, I do not. I don't believe there's a correlation there, to be honest with you. I think that they operate very almost very differently between the K-5 program, our middle school program, and then our high school program. Each of them are very unique in what they're in how they educate the students and how in the audiences that they that they attract. But the vast majority of students that we attract are in the high school. I would say 11th and 12th graders, 13th graders and 14th graders.
Yeah, thank you. And then I believe you mentioned it in the beginning, so my apologies that I didn't catch it. How many teachers are serving your current population?
I believe we have about 180 right now, 180 to 200 teachers right now.
Okay, so I'm not super good at quick math in my head. Do you know approximately how many students to each teacher, or does that vary greatly by grade level?
It varies by grade level, and it also varies our teachers don't have a bigger caseload than a brick and mortars teacher would have. But the way that the students come in throughout the year, it doesn't function like a brick and mortar school. We have 13, I think, or 17 start dates throughout the year. So there are 17 start dates for students throughout the year. It's not, semester 1, semester 2, and then go on summer break. In fact, summertime is one of our most busiest times for educating students. But there's starts every 2 weeks for students, and they're put into cohort. This is not on your own. You are put into a cohort, and you are with a certified teacher. And we keep those classes small so that they're manageable for the teacher, but they're rotating. And so a teacher may have 5 classes in one prep, 30 students in a class, 35 students in a class.
Thank you for elaborating on the model. I
Okay.
appreciate that.
That helps.
Can I ask one final question? So I know on the alternative status, traditionally, I would expect your special education population number to be slightly higher.
Mhm.
I noticed that it's at 10%.
Mhm.
That feels a bit low for an alternative school. So what does your process look like for identifying or serving those special education students?
We have the 45-day screening process. Also, when they're enrolling into the school, we're getting all of their transcripts and we're getting any of their records from their previous school to identify those students. And so if they do have special needs or if they're on an IEP, then we have a large team of special education teachers, speech pathologists, and 2 school psychologists.
So if they come into the program, but inside of Primavera, they wouldn't be identified or
No, they're being
evaluated?
identified inside of Primavera through the
Okay.
45-day screening and
45 days.
teachers who are identifying special needs. And if they are, then they're referred to special ed. And then we do the we do we do that.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
for those
you.
answers.
Member Ruiz?
Thank you, President Montier. I have a couple questions. So you kind of attributed COVID and all of your employees going home and working remotely, and then you have this facility. Is everybody back
They are. Back, but we've gone hybrid at this point in time. Our employees after COVID, before we had no hybrid, it was just everybody came to the office. During the 2.5 years, during what we consider the COVID period, everyone was completely remote. Then we started to bring back our employees, and right now there's a hybrid schedule for all of the employees. So the teachers are back in the office 4 days a week right now. Depending on the different roles, I think will determine whether or not the teammates are going to be and what their schedule is going to look like.
Okay. And parroting Ms. Bard's comments, we are concerned. Our portfolio, we've had a lot of tough cases come in front of our board. Small charters that are getting squeezed out and seeing, dwindling enrollments, and I mean, we've had a lot of, and I'm very, very sorry to hear about the situation, and I'm sure it's not comfortable to any of the people that have come, before our board, that it's gotten to that point. This question is probably more for staff. What is our in our portfolio? What is the capacity right now for alternative online instruction? Do you happen to know? I mean, is it, if we have 35 AOIs, and each one of them can, maybe some of them are operating at 250, but they have a 750. But is there a way to find out, what our total capacity is in the current situation?
President Montier and Member Ruiz, at this point, it would be nearly impossible for us to figure out what the capacity would be looking at all the market indicators. I will say there is considerable change going on in the market right now. I think coming out of COVID, students are facing different challenges. Schools are facing different challenges. The market, it looks considerably different than it did pre-COVID. It also, when we look at the portfolio in general, our portfolio has had about 20% of its schools be alternative for many years. I think going back into the time that I first started the board around 2017, and that 20% threshold was true back then as well. So I would say the alternative space has been pretty consistent at about 20% of our school portfolio. In addition to that, I think for the online, we did see an uptick in students that were going and accessing online education via our online schools in the charter space during COVID. Since then, it has somewhat leveled out a little bit, where we do see students accessing online for more credit recovery. But I would say the option for online education is still there. But again, it's changing as the needs change with the students. Mm-hmm.
Board members, any other questions? I have one question, and perhaps I missed it, so forgive me. I've been jotting notes and trying to circle back, and it's a little chicken scratchy, so I apologize. Early on in your presentation, you mentioned that you have a defined alt status, but I think I missed what the definition was. So if you could just enlighten me, that would be really great, because it sounds like you were coming, like, the way that I understood the presentation, and so if I misunderstood, please let me know. But the way I understood was that it was alt status, alt status, alt status. 3 years we lost alt status, and now we have redefined alt status, or we're honing in on what alt status is. But then that was where it was left, and I feel like I missed something. So if you could elaborate on that, I'd really appreciate it.
President Montier, thank you for that question. Since 2012, since 2012, we have been an approved and alternative school since the state came out with the alternative school status. And this last year, we were reapproved by the Department of Education as an alternative school. So we are currently an approved alternative school. And when the letter grade comes out this year, we will be a performing letter grade school in 2024 as well.
So I misunderstood what you
my
had said. No, that's okay.
apologies.
It was me, because I understood that you were in alt status, and then there were some years where you didn't apply for alt status.
Yeah.
And so that's why, I saw.
Yeah.
Thank you. And that's why I was a little bit confused, because the way that I interpreted the message was that we went in and redefined for us, for Primavera, what alt status is and how we're going to go about applying for that. So that's why am I wrong? Okay.
It's not redefined, it's defining it so everybody understands what a student who is poor academic standing, what does that look like?
Right.
A student ward of the state, any of those 5 additional categories, is we made sure we communicate that so everybody understands at any point in time a student potentially could fall into those 5 identifying factors. And if so, they are classified as an alternative student.
Okay, that's where I was going with it. And how did you go about doing that with your staff?
Essentially, we look at the guidelines that get released. Obviously, post-COVID, it has changed some of the verbiage. So that's one of the first steps that we do, is we look at what is the prior year and what has changed.
Okay.
We take a look at each defining category and we identify, has any of that changed? Essentially, what we do during the enrollment process is we meet with the team that collects documentation, and we determine, first step, the easiest to identify as poor academic standing. Is the student a year or more deficient in anything, whether it's a student who was retained from K to 8, if a student is credit deficient from 9 through 12, if it's a student that has been referred to us by CPS, obviously that student is identified as ward of the state. We meet with those particular staff members. Then we re-review the student again based on if we don't get their full academic documents at the time of enrollment. So say with the school doesn't send us their history of discipline records. We'd also take that look at different times throughout their enrollment cycle. So each role essentially has a better definition understanding of what are the 5 categories essentially a student could qualify for, and what are their supporting documents. And if there is not, we don't classify that student as an alternative student.
Thank you. That helps me better understand because I wanted to find out where there were obviously some holes and gaps in with your staff, it sounds like, for those 3 years. So I was trying to find out how that was being rectified, I guess, is a
And
word.
also as well, and one of the things I do want to speak about, when I came into my role, one of the tasks I was given was to look back at the prior years
Mhm.
to ensure that we would have achieved the 70%. During school year 2021 and 21-22, in reviewing the data, a lot of the documents were not received within that academic year due to most of the school districts being closed.
Mm.
So we made the attempt to go back, not necessarily to reapply, but having a full understanding of the student's academic history to see if we had the proper information, would we have been able to help that student succeed?
Okay.
And if we did not, then how could we have rectified that situation? So that went into ensuring moving forward, our goal is always to have the full student's academic history, ranging from test records, discipline records, anything
Right.
of that nature.
Okay. Thank you. Did you want to make another comment on that? Because otherwise, Member Foster online does have her hand up. So
Oh, okay.
Did-
No, we're.
you're
good.
okay. Okay. All right. Member Foster.
Hello, thank you for coming and presenting, and being humble to explain. And maybe I miss it, but my concern is, what are some of the wraparound services you have for the students? I heard about tutoring, but my concern is what's happening with the students. What else is in place to support these students during this time?
Yeah, that's a great question, Board Member Foster. President Montier, I'm going to let Ms. Pagalatos answer the question.
Thank you for the question. We do have a multi-tiered system of interventions in place. So our teachers, again, do collaborate with each other to kind of problem solve and intervene with our students. We also have 20 school counselors that are able to support our students. The tutoring is a huge component, but the teachers do work with the students in small groups, and they also provide one-on-ones for the students. And then again, we do have school counselors to help with the social emotional learning pieces, and they do provide virtual instruction on that as well for our students K through 12.
Did that answer your question, Member Foster?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, lovely. All right. Any other, Dr. Crockett?
Just one last question.
No, that's totally fine.
So you returned in 2022,
Mm-hmm.
and yet you only applied for the change to be defined again as an alternative in right now, basically.
Yeah.
What was the delay?
Yeah, I came back in late spring of 2022 when I returned. And by the time I had returned, the application process, you apply the previous year for the following year. And so the application process, by the time I identified this, it was too late to apply by that time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
President
Ms. Miller,
Montier,
yeah.
can I- one other follow-up question. Thank you. I am a big fan of NWEA. I love that it sort of shows an individual student's growth right on the continuum. So I heard you mention that you were shifting away from NWEA. So kind of a two-part question, and I don't want to belabor the point, but were there no indications in that formative benchmark data beyond the state label for maybe an intervention that was needed sooner? And then how do you see Exact Path being a better fit or for that?
Our teachers also look at their formative and summative assessment data. So we have those internal metrics that they're looking at consistently along with the benchmark data. With Exact Path, it also offered us that diagnostic piece with students coming in at different intervals and not necessarily having their academic records. It really helps us in a timely manner to hone in on those skills that they need additional support in. So again, whether that support comes from the classroom teacher or a tutor. That's one thing, but ExactPath also offers us the capacity to design an individualized learning path for the student to help them get back onto grade level. So it designs that learning path with the skills that they're working on. And that we're working on our power standards. So that was a critical component of our strategy, as well as realigning our curriculum to make sure that we are meeting state expectations and focusing on the things that we are expected to do in terms of not only what the state set as the standard, but also the state assessment.
Does that answer your question? Yes. All right, Member Jones.
President Montier, board members, I do have one more question based on a comment that was provided. So in fiscal year 22, 23, or 24, did you use the State Board of Education appeals process to try to appeal the application for alt, the letter grade, any of those things?
We did not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, questions? Trying to make sure I see everybody. No. Okay, so this time we obviously have a very huge decision to make, and I would like to reach out to our legal counsel and ask a couple questions, just how we go about that. This is a pretty big thing. Can you give us some? Is there any legal advice that we need from you at this time to move forward?
If you have any legal questions that you have regarding this, I would advise that go into executive session.
Okay. Well, I think that we need to go into executive session then. So if I may make a motion for us to go into executive session. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks.
Second.
Vice President Close. Superintendent Designee Miller.
Aye.
Ms. Barr.
Aye.
Dr. Crockett.
Aye.
Ms. Foster.
Aye.
Ms. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz.
Aye.
President Montier.
Aye.
Motion passes. Just for business practices and how this is going to work, Member Foster, we will put you into a breakout room to go into executive session. And board members, we will go into the executive session room, which is right over here. And everyone else will stay in this room. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Member Foster, can you say hi so we know you're present?
Hello.
There we go. Hello. There you are. Okay. All right. Ashley, can we get a roll call, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
President Montier,
Here.
Vice President Close, Superintendent Designee Miller,
Here.
Miss Barr,
Here.
Dr. Crockett,
Here.
Miss Foster,
Here.
Miss Jones,
Here.
Mr. Ruiz.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Lovely. Okay. So are there any questions for or comments that anyone would like to make before we make a motion, or is there a motion? Ms. Barr.
I have some questions for board staff. So back in fiscal year 2022, when we had our first D letter grade falls far below standard, can you just sort of walk us through the process of what is done when schools receive that overall rating?
Yes, President Montier and Member Barr, when a charter receives a D letter grade or a failing letter grade, that does trigger some potential action by our board or the Department of Ed. It should be noted that our board works really closely with the Department of Ed or the State Board of Education, whichever agency oversees certain processes. Once a charter is identified in this instance as a D letter grade, the Department of Ed does work with schools through a school improvement process, and we work alongside the Department of Ed with them. We do not duplicate that process. So that process is through the Department of Education and their school improvement division.
Okay, and then as a follow-up to that, in the second year for fiscal year 2023, is there anything done differently? Or is it just a continued process? How exactly does that play out?
There's no difference through our board. Again, we continue to watch the letter grade performance of the charter and then wait and hope that they don't eventually not meet under our expectations.
Okay, thank you.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, President Montier. One thing that I kind of would like to flesh out a little bit more, and this was why I was talking about capacity, is that the enrollment cap. I know as we approve new online charters, we've had an enrollment cap that they said this is where we want to start, but this is where we want to have some flexibility. Is there the reason why there's like 100,000 student enrollment cap? Is that's because it's been grandfathered, or is that?
It's my understanding that this goes many years back prior to the time that staff has been at the board. But it's my understanding that when online became an option in the state of Arizona, that the Department of Education put that as in us as well, put that in the system as a way to track enrollment when we didn't know how enrollment was really going to be tracked.
So we probably wouldn't a new as part of a new charter's packet, if they put 100,000, we would, and they said, well, we'll probably start out with 200 and then grow or something. We wouldn't necessarily just out the gate go with 100,000.
Member Ruiz, that is correct. When a new charter comes in front of you for an application, so an initial new charter application, they do state their enrollment cap and their proposal for enrollment cap. And usually what we see is a growth model, right? And they are significantly lower in their enrollment cap than 100,000. And that is typical for our existing charters as well, in that if they come in front of the board for additional enrollment cap, we will see that growth throughout a 3-year process.
And over a 3-year time frame, what would be a typical cushion, I guess, for if somebody says I want to serve 7,000 people, students?
Member Ruiz, typically when board staff looks at like recommendation criteria or other areas in which we are evaluating an enrollment cap request, we look at the past enrollment cap trends of that charter to see what would likely be needed in the future.
Thank you.
Dr. Crockett.
Thank you very much. And I was originally going to ask if I might ask another member of this board for information, but let me ask staff first. And if a status change takes place, how is a school notified, or are they notified of that change? For instance, if it was changed from an alternative to other, how would the school be notified of that?
Member Crockett, it is the responsibility of the charter to apply to the Department of Education to be approved for an alternative status. Each year, the charter has to apply. So even if they were approved in previous years, they must then again submit for alternative status or approval with the Department of Education the following year. So they would be notified because they would be approved by the Department of Ed based on a submitted application to them.
But there would be nothing in the communication saying your status has changed.
The State Board for Charter Schools does not communicate the alternative status because that is a status that is provided and designated by the Department of Education.
Okay. Much. And let me just follow up with a member of the
Sure.
board, if that's okay. So in your experience in the charter space and the alternative space, what has that happened to other charters before?
Member
Or
Crockett,
alternative?
yeah, thank you for the question. So I can explain a little bit about the process. So when a school applies for alternative status, first of all, there's a few things that happen. So the Department of Education, including what's called the AA TAC, which is the Alternative Accountability Technical Advisory Committee, there's consistent communication sent to any school that has ever applied for alt status. It is sent to their accountability coordinator. It's generally sent to other people that are listed within the Department of Education as part of that team that is, responsible for that. So there's consistent communication that is sent out that then communicates that you need to apply again for this process. What I do know is the Department of Education staff is extremely helpful when it comes to if a school did not apply for renewal and they had previously had that alternative alternative school designation, the members of Department of Ed in accountability, they actually reach out to those schools and they reach out to them individually to notify them that, they had not submitted an application. They had submitted an application the previous year, and ask them, are they planning on submitting? There's a conversation that takes place. So because there's annually a list produced of all schools that are also approved for alternative status, whether they're in a renewal or an initial certification year. And so if you're not, I guess what would happen is if for some reason somebody from your school or your LEA was not on a list somewhere with the Department of Education, you may not receive that communication directly. However, it's also posted on the Department of Education website on a regular basis with the timelines that they need to submit to.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
President Montier, can I just tag on to that question? Not to put you on the spot, Member Jones, but you're so much better versed. I'm familiar with all the elementary, but the college and career ready points earlier, your comments indicated that was something that you calculate at least partially internally and submit. Do you mind just explaining that a little bit better?
No problem. So the college and career readiness, the index is actually for traditional 9 through 12. It's through alternative 9 through 12, and it gives schools an opportunity to actually signify students that are graduating from your school. What are the things that they're doing that have reached college and career readiness status, basically? And there's an index, and there's things that you mark for students to show that they have actually reached these milestones to then be productive members of society, basically, to be successful beyond high school. And so it is an intentional programming decision. It's also intentional in that you have to gather the data. You then have to self-report that data, and you have deadlines to self-report that data. The data is always due at the end of the school year, but provided with ample time through July 31st. If a school does not submit the college and career readiness or any other self-reported data by July 31st, then the Department of Education staff and accountability actually reach out to schools individually. They do reach out to them. They do ask them, are you planning on submitting? If they do signify, if you don't submit, please understand it is high stakes because you then receive a 0. And for alternative, like I had explained before, 0 out of 35 points on an indicator is significant. So it's very high stakes. So there is a lot of communication that does take place, but it is due annually July 31st.
And
I hope that helps.
I'm going to tag in here
Yeah.
too, because I do have experience with
Yeah,
the
yeah.
career readiness as well. The indicators have not changed in quite some time. So it's consistent year over year.
And that you said was regardless of alt status or
Right,
yeah.
traditional status.
It's 9 through 12. It's focusing on your, yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions or comments? Any feedback? Okay.
I want to make some comments before I make a motion though. So are we ready for a motion?
Well, that was my next question. Are we ready for a motion then? All right, you're up, sir.
All right. First of all, Mr. Kramer, I just want to, two things. I want to, so you're a couple years younger than I am, but I have over 25 years of experience in that too, education policy. And I appreciate all the work you've done. And but I want to point out two things. One, when you shouldered the burden, the responsibility, that really resonated with me. I want to thank you for your exercise of leadership in that. Secondarily, I want to also express my sympathy, as other board members have, for the adversity that you've had to confront in the recent past. But having said that, as I said, I have had a number of years of experience in education. Thank you. The greater part of that has been with tribal schools, where we've dealt with at-risk populations, populations exceeding 25% with special needs, school or family issues, poverty, drugs, alcohol. And we've had to deal with them, and in that time, there are schools that I've dealt with that were funded by the Bureau of Indian Education, schools that were funded directly by the tribe, and not more than a few schools that were chartered from the state. So I understand your position, and I appreciate where you are. I'm not one, because you resonated with me, because the situation was close to my heart, so to speak. I did research, I studied, I learned, I asked questions. So I'm not doing this in a vacuum. And I appreciate the questions that were asked by the other board members that answered questions I didn't even think of. But, now is the time, and I'm not one for public flogging, but this is a time for decisions and for decisions to be made by this board. Hopefully wise ones, determining the best course to travel on in the future. To that end, I'm making a motion. I move to issue a notice of intent to revoke the charter contract of American Virtual Academy for failure to meet the academic performance expectations set forth in the board's academic performance framework and the Arizona Administrative Code in violation of its charter and state law. American Virtual Academy is hereby given notice that it must comply with the requirements set forth in the administrative rule regarding notice to the school, staff, parents, and guardians of the notice of intent to revoke and with the required submissions to the board.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Dr. Crockett, Ashley, can we get a roll call, please?
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Ms. Foster,
Aye, sorry.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
No.
President Montier.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Can I add on to that real quickly?
Oh,
This was
yes.
not an easy decision. And I don't know if anyone pointed it out in session, but this has set a precedent in that this is an unprecedented situation. So that's all I wanted to say for the record.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to item I. And that would be a presentation by Rachel.
President Monteith, Vice President Close, Superintendent Designee Miller, and board members. Board staff is proposing that the criteria to receive a staff recommendation be modified for all expansion amendments currently brought before the board for consideration. This would include amendments to add a new school, increase the enrollment cap, or increase grade levels served by a charter holder. The current criteria were adopted in August of 2016, and many of them are outdated and overlap with the board's current eligibility criteria. To be clear, no changes are being proposed to the criteria that must be met to submit an amendment. Rather, these changes are the criteria board staff evaluates to determine whether an amendment item is placed on the consent agenda or the regular agenda. And as a reminder, you can always pull something from the consent agenda for further discussion and consideration. In this proposal, board staff is also proposing the adoption of criteria for replication applications that are similar to the proposed criteria for the new school amendment request, as no criteria currently exists for the replication application. And finally, the proposed recommendation criteria also includes adopting criteria for renewal application considerations, as recommendation criteria currently does not exist for those applications either. And I am ready and available to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? Ms. Barr.
I do, and my sincerest apologies. I think the room kind of, I forgot my question. My sincerest apologies.
That's okay.
If I think of it again, I'll pop up with it.
Anyone else? Questions? Do we have, oh, yes,
Sorry, I
she
remembered.
remembered.
Okay.
Yay.
So essentially, just to make sure I have my head wrapped around this properly, this is really just to help streamline amendments and applications for the future. That's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. We're just trying to better capture what we're seeing from board members in the questions you're asking and the decisions that you're making as it relates to amendments. Make sure replication can kind of follow that same line of questioning and moving forward that way. Also, just trying to decrease the number of things you have to have so many discussions about, not for lack of transparency, but just to capture what we're trying to do here. And then finally, for replication, will have 21 renewals coming before you in the next couple of months. And so if we can put some of those highest quality operators on the consent agenda, it will kind of help everybody out.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Right. And just to kind of piggyback on that and clarify, so we're looking at this primarily addresses charters that are in good standing, and there are no concerns from board staff at all. And we're just looking at following process and procedure for moving forward. Correct?
That is absolutely correct. It won't change anything about who is on your agenda. It will just determine where they are placed on your agenda.
Okay. All right. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did.
Okay,
Thank you so
great.
much.
Does anybody else have any other questions? No. Okay. With that, do we have anyone that would like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All
Thanks
right.
for all the hard work of the staff. Thank you. And this is item I, right? I move that the board adopt the revisions to the staff recommendation criteria for expansion amendments, replication applications, and renewal applications as presented to the board today and found in the materials for today's board meeting, and direct staff to make necessary technical or formatting changes to documentation necessary for clarity, consistency, or readability.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Ashley, please.
Vice President Close,
Aye.
Superintendent Designee Miller,
Aye.
Ms. Barr,
Aye.
Dr. Crockett,
Aye.
Ms. Foster,
Aye.
Ms. Jones,
Aye.
Mr. Ruiz,
Aye.
President Monteith.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay. On to item J, summary of current events, future meeting dates, and items for future agendas.
Our next meeting is on April 1st, and that is no joke. It is April 1st. Good joke, huh? Yeah, so that's the next meeting is April 1st. And other than that, I have nothing else to report.
Seems like it's just
That's because time's flying.
a trick of the moon.
Yes. Well, if there is nothing else, then we will move on to item K. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.